Turns out, working late is corporate speak for horizontal career advancement with the new associate. There I was, standing in the doorway of my husband's corner office at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, holding 3 containers of his favorite osso buco from that little Italian place in the North End that requires reservations 6 weeks in advance. The security guard had let me up with a sympathetic smile. Another late night for Mr. Armstrong, huh? Not knowing he was giving me a front-row seat to the live-action performance of my marriage's death scene. I'm Astrid Armstrong, 38, marketing consultant extraordinaire with a specialty in crisis management. Ironic, considering I completely missed the 5-alarm fire burning in my own house for the past 6 months. 11 years of marriage to Wesley Armstrong, junior partner at Caldwell, Bishop & Fletcher, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms, and apparently I'd been demoted from wife to inconvenient backstory without receiving the memo. The memo that was currently being written across Wesley's mahogany desk, where 27-year-old Veda Sinclair, Harvard Law's most ambitious new hire, was splayed like a legal brief he was thoroughly reviewing. Her Louboutins pointed at opposite corners of his office ceiling while my husband's monogrammed shirt, the one I had custom-made for his 40th birthday last year, was bunched around his waist. The deposition prep is going well, I see, I said, my voice slicing through their synchronized panting like a Japanese chef's knife through overpriced sushi. 2 heads whipped toward me with such synchronized precision they could have qualified for the Olympics. Wesley's face performed an impressive color transformation. Red to white faster than a traffic light in reverse. Veda scrambled to pull her pencil skirt down while simultaneously buttoning her blouse, achieving neither effectively. Astrid, Wesley sputtered, jumping back so fast he nearly toppled his ergonomic chair that I'd spent 3 weeks researching before buying. This isn't. I cut him off with a raised hand. Don't. I worked in PR long enough to recognize damage control when I see it. And honey, there's not enough spin in the world to make this look like anything other than exactly what it is. I placed the bag of food on his client chair. I brought dinner, for 3. Though I see you've already worked up quite an appetite. Veda had the audacity to look annoyed, as if I was the one interrupting her scheduled activity. Wesley, she hissed. Who is this? The corner of my mouth twitched. Who is this? I repeated. 11 years of marriage and all those holiday parties and she doesn't know who I am? Darling, your HR department's facial recognition training needs serious work. Wesley was frantically tucking in his shirt, his Harvard law brain clearly short-circuiting in search of the correct legal precedent for being caught with your pants literally down. Astrid, please let me explain. Explain? I smiled the same smile I use when clients pitch catastrophically bad campaign ideas. What's to explain? Working late was never about the Anderson merger, was it? More like the Sinclair acquisition. I turned to Veda, who was now standing with her arms crossed defensively over her chest. Did he use the "my wife doesn't understand me" line? Or did he go with, "we're basically separated but living together for tax purposes"? I'm curious which vintage cliché he pulled from the cheater's handbook. Wesley moved toward me, hand outstretched like he was approaching a rabid animal. Astrid, please, let's discuss this at home. Home? I laughed, and it sounded like glass breaking. You mean that place where you've spent approximately 6 hours a week for the past 3 months? The place where I've been heating up your dinner and then wrapping it in plastic when you text that you're stuck at work again? I pulled out my phone, thumbed through to the screen I'd prepared, and held it up. Speaking of work, you two should be more careful about using the office Amex for your business lunches at Soralina. The accounting department keeps excellent records. I swiped to the next image. Also, the hotel across the street has security cameras in the elevator. You might want to wait until you reach the room before sucking face next time. Veda's eyes widened. You had us followed? That's invasion of privacy. I turned to her with my best boardroom smile. Actually, it's called gathering evidence for a divorce proceeding. And FYI, when you're making out in public places, privacy isn't a reasonable expectation. First-year law stuff, really. The security guard appeared in the doorway behind me, looking concerned. Everything okay in here, Mrs. Armstrong? Just peachy, Frank, I replied without taking my eyes off the adulterous tableau before me. I was just leaving. Apparently, I'm interrupting a very important oral argument. Wesley stepped forward, desperation replacing shock. Astrid, wait. I held up my hand again. Save it for someone who still believes your billable hours. And Wesley, don't come home tonight. Or ever, really. I've already called the locksmith. Consider it a time-saving measure. You won't have to pretend you're working late anymore. As I turned to leave, I paused at the door and addressed Veda directly. By the way, you might want to get tested. The persistent sore throat his wife had last month wasn't actually strep. Funny how these things get passed around, isn't it? I walked out, heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor, leaving them to marinate in the wreckage and the rapidly cooling osso buco. As the elevator doors closed, I finally let my hands shake, my breath coming in short gasps as 11 years of marriage collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. But here's the thing about being a crisis management specialist. When everything burns to the ground, you don't just stand there watching the flames. You start planning how to rebuild something better from the ashes, or in my case, how to make sure everyone knows exactly who lit the match. My phone buzzed with a text from Wesley. Can we please talk about this? It's not what it looked like. I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. Actually, for once, something is exactly what it looks like. Congratulations on the rare achievement of complete transparency in your life. The elevator reached the lobby, and as I stepped out, I straightened my spine, adjusted my Burberry trench coat, and smiled at the night security guard. Have a good evening, Frank. You too, Mrs. Armstrong. Mrs. Armstrong. For how much longer, I wondered. But as I pushed through the revolving doors into the crisp Boston night, a strange sense of lightness began to replace the initial shock. The humiliation was still there, burning like acid, but underneath it was something unexpected. Freedom. And the first inklings of a plan that would make Wesley wish he'd actually been working late after all. Because if there's one thing I know how to do, it's manage a crisis and turn it into an opportunity. The thing about catching your husband playing hide the legal briefs with his associate is that it fundamentally changes how you see everything. Suddenly, your entire marriage transforms into one of those before and after renovation shows. Except instead of revealing a beautiful kitchen makeover, you discover the foundation of your house has been rotting for years. I spent the night at the Liberty Hotel, an ironic choice given it used to be a jail, and I was the one feeling imprisoned in lies for God knows how long. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 32 texts from Wesley, each more desperate than the last, culminating in, "Please come home. We can work through this. I made a mistake." A mistake. A mistake is using salt instead of sugar in your coffee. A mistake is hitting reply all on an email venting about your boss. Repeatedly taking your pants off in the presence of someone who isn't your wife requires a bit more intentionality than your average oops moment. I ordered room service, enjoying the petty satisfaction of putting it on the credit card Wesley and I shared. Nothing says processing betrayal quite like a $14 grapefruit and a $22 avocado toast that I'd normally roll my eyes at. The waiter who delivered it had the look of a man who'd seen plenty of women holed up alone in hotel rooms the morning after discovering infidelity. "Rough night?" he asked, setting down my ridiculously overpriced breakfast. "Let's just say I'm considering a career change to locksmith, since apparently I'm the only one in Boston who believes doors should remain closed when other people's spouses are behind them." He gave me a sympathetic smile and slipped me an extra croissant. On the house. Carbs help with heartbreak. By noon, I'd moved from shock to strategic planning. As I sat cross-legged on the hotel bed with my laptop, I created a folder titled Operation Titanic, Watch This Ship Go Down. First order of business, calling Margot Palmer, Boston's most feared divorce attorney, known affectionately in legal circles as the Piranha. "So he was actually doing her on his desk?" Margot asked after I'd laid out the situation. Her voice had the practiced neutrality of someone who'd heard it all before, yet couldn't quite hide her professional appreciation for such a clear-cut case. Like they were auditioning for a low-budget legal drama. The Firm, After Hours edition. "And you have evidence of previous encounters?" "Receipts, hotel footage, mysterious late meetings that don't appear in the firm's calendar. Plus, I hired Bennett Investigations last month when the red flags started looking like a communist parade." Margot's typing was audible over the phone. Good. Massachusetts is a no-fault state, but evidence of adultery can influence asset division and alimony. Did you sign a prenup? No. 11 years ago, we were both making entry-level salaries and sharing a studio apartment in Somerville where we could hear the neighbors flush their toilet. Prenups weren't exactly on our radar. Even better, she said, and I could practically hear her sharpening her metaphorical knives. What's your ideal outcome here, Astrid? I stared out the window at the Boston skyline. I want him to feel exactly what I'm feeling right now, and I want half of everything, including his precious partnership shares. The financial part is straightforward. The emotional revenge, that's extracurricular. Just don't do anything that would compromise our position. I smiled to myself. I wouldn't dream of it. After hanging up with Margot, I checked my work email and found a message from Giselle Bryant, the marketing director at Landry Pharmaceuticals, one of the biggest potential clients I'd been courting for my firm. She wanted to meet for coffee to discuss a crisis management campaign following some problematic clinical trial results. As I sat in a corner booth at Thinking Cup an hour later, Giselle looked at me with concern. Are you okay? You seem different. Just discovered my husband's extracurricular activities include his new associate rather than actual work. Yesterday, in his office, on his desk, I said, stirring my latte with unnecessary vigor. Giselle's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. No, he didn't. Oh, but he did. With Harvard Law's newest legal eagle. Because apparently passing the bar means you're qualified to break up marriages. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Astrid, that's awful. What are you going to do? Well, currently I'm sitting here trying to focus on your pharmaceutical crisis rather than my personal dumpster fire. Compartmentalization. It's not just for sociopaths anymore. Giselle gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. You know what? I think you're exactly the person we need right now. Because nothing says hire me like a woman on the verge of a nuclear divorce. Because you understand crisis from the inside out. Huh? She tapped her manicured nail on the table decisively. We're not just looking for PR help anymore. We need a complete reputation overhaul, and I think your unique perspective might be valuable. By the time I left the coffee shop, I had a signed contract for double my usual consulting fee. Apparently, righteous anger translates well to confident pitching. Who knew? When I returned to the hotel, there was a massive bouquet of flowers waiting at the front desk. The card read, Astrid, please come home. I love you. We can fix this. Wesley. I handed the flowers to the concierge. Could you donate these to the hospital across the street, preferably to patients suffering from especially communicable diseases? That evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Astrid? This is Margaret Armstrong, my mother-in-law. Perfect, because this day needed an extra sprinkle of awkward on top. Margaret. What a surprise, I said, keeping my voice as neutral as Switzerland during every major conflict. Wesley told me you're having problems. He's absolutely beside himself. I bit back a laugh. Was he beside himself yesterday when he was on top of his associate? A sharp intake of breath. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Wesley would never. Margaret, unless your son has an identical twin I don't know about, there's no misunderstanding possible when you walk in on your husband playing hide the salami with a woman 13 years his junior on his office desk. Silence stretched between us like overcooked mozzarella. I don't know what to say, she finally managed. That makes two of us. Though in my case, it's because there are simply too many options, most of which would make a sailor blush. He says it was just the one time, a terrible mistake. I cut her off. Do you know how many working late texts I've gotten in the past 3 months? 37? That's 37 terrible mistakes at minimum, and those are just the ones I know about. After an excruciating conversation where Margaret cycled through the classic stages of defending my precious son, denial, minimization, blaming my work schedule, and finally reluctant acceptance, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. What can I do? You can tell your son to have his things out of our house by Friday. And Margaret, you might want to cancel that family Christmas card photo shoot you've been planning. Unless you want to feature your son with his new office accessory instead of his wife. After hanging up, I scrolled through Instagram to find that Veda Sinclair had already set her profile to private. Smart move, if about 24 hours too late. Wesley's last post was from our anniversary dinner 6 weeks ago. All smiles and champagne glasses with the caption, 11 amazing years with this woman. When blessed check lucky man. The hashtags aged about as well as milk in August. My phone pinged with a text from Wesley. I've been trying to call you all day. Please talk to me. I fired Veda this morning. It was a horrible mistake that will never happen again. I texted back, congratulations on firing your girlfriend after being caught. Very brave. FYI. Your mother knows. The locksmith knows. Frank the security guard knows. Soon everyone will know. Dacha blessed at your lucky man. Then I ordered another room service meal, took a long bath, and started making a list of everything in our house that I actually cared about keeping. Turns out it was a surprisingly short list. The life we'd built suddenly seemed like a movie set, all facade with nothing of substance behind it. As I sipped my overpriced hotel wine, I wondered if the Armstrong annual firm dinner was still on for next month. The event Wesley complained about organizing every year, but secretly loved because it showcased his importance. That's when inspiration struck like a lightning bolt of pure, delicious vengeance. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine meticulously planned, publicly executed, and garnished with a sprig of professional devastation. The Armstrong annual firm dinner wasn't just an opportunity. It was practically gift-wrapped and delivered with a bow. 3 days after the desk incident, as I'd begun referring to it in my head, I moved into a sleek downtown apartment that cost more per month than my first car. The building had a doorman who checked IDs and a strict no cheating spouses allowed policy, at least for my unit. Mrs. Armstrong, there's a gentleman insisting on seeing you, the concierge called up on my 4th day there. A Mr. Armstrong? Says he's your husband. Tell Mr. Armstrong that being my husband is currently under review, like his partnership prospects after the HR department receives my email tomorrow. I hadn't actually planned to contact HR. Margot advised against it, but Wesley didn't need to know that. The beauty of psychological warfare is that the threat is often more effective than the follow-through. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. You can't just threaten my career. Wesley's voice had that particular pitch men get when their actions suddenly have consequences. Interesting. I distinctly remember saying something similar about our marriage. Yet here we are. Astrid, please. I made a terrible mistake. A mistake is something you do once, Wesley. The hotel receipts from the past 4 months suggest this was more of a hobby. Silence. Then, how did you know about the hotels? I laughed, enjoying the rare satisfaction of knowing more than a man who made his living by outmaneuvering others. I'm a crisis manager, darling. Did you think I wouldn't manage my own? After hanging up, I opened my laptop to continue Operation Titanic. The annual firm dinner was exactly 22 days away, which gave me just enough time to prepare my masterpiece. My first call was to Pierce Sullivan, the firm's IT director and an old friend from my college days. We'd kept in touch over the years, occasionally meeting for lunch when I visited Wesley at work. Astrid? Haven't heard from you since… well, you know. Pierce's voice was cautious. Since you watched my husband and his barely legal associate doing the horizontal mambo on his Herman Miller? Yeah. News travels fast in glass buildings. I'm so sorry. If it helps, everyone's Team Astrid. Wesley looks like he hasn't slept in days, and they fired Veda the morning after. Speaking of the firm, the annual dinner is coming up, and I have a proposition that involves your particular set of skills. Pierce hesitated. Astrid, I can't risk my job. Not even to help an old friend who just got humiliated in your workplace? Besides, nothing I'm proposing is illegal. I just need access to some company materials. 2 hours and one very expensive lunch later, Pierce was on board. Wesley had always underestimated my network of connections, a fatal error for someone who practiced relationship law. My next call was to Edison Mercer, managing partner at Mercer, Vaughan & Associates, Caldwell, Bishop and Fletcher's biggest competitor. Edison and I had worked together on a marketing campaign last year, and he'd made no secret of his desire to poach me for his firm. Astrid, how's my favorite marketing genius? Currently divorcing her unfaithful husband and plotting a career change. How about you? Edison didn't miss a beat. Intrigued and suddenly very available for lunch. Tomorrow? Over lobster rolls at Neptune Oyster, I laid out a proposition that made Edison's eyes widen with each detail. You're sure Landry Pharmaceuticals would follow you? That's a multi-million-dollar account. I sipped my water, enjoying the rare power position. Giselle Bryant has already signed with me personally, not my agency. And she specifically mentioned that their legal needs might be better served elsewhere too. By dessert, I had a job offer as Mercer's new director of client relations, with double my current salary and a signing bonus that would cover 6 months in my new apartment. One more thing, I added as Edison signed the check. I need to borrow your technical team for a special project. The real stroke of genius came 3 days later when I was mindlessly scrolling through Wesley's emails that Pierce had helpfully provided access to. Among the desperate messages to Veda's personal account and pathetic attempts to reach me, I found a correspondence that made me sit up straight. Emails between Wesley and the firm's biggest client, Barrett Industries, revealed that he had been overstating his hours and double billing them for months. The client was getting suspicious, demanding a complete audit of all charges. Wesley had been frantically covering his tracks, deleting calendar entries and creating fake documentation. Not only was he cheating on me, but he was also cheating his clients and potentially committing fraud. I forwarded everything to Margot with the subject line, "Christmas came early." Her response was immediate. "Holy jackpot, Batman. This changes everything. Do not confront him with this yet." The pieces were falling into place faster than I could have imagined. By the time I met with Rowan Tate, the audiovisual technician at Mercer, I had a comprehensive dossier on Wesley's professional and personal indiscretions. "So let me get this straight," Rowan said, looking over my elaborate presentation plan. "You want to create a dual-screen presentation with corporate metrics on one side and evidence of your husband's affair on the other? Think of it as a performance review, but for his life choices instead of his billable hours." Rowan whistled. "Remind me never to cross you. That's the idea." 2 days before the annual dinner, I made my final preparations. My dress, a crimson sheath that cost more than our first month's rent in Somerville, hung ready. My presentation was backed up on 3 different devices. The seating chart had been adjusted to ensure maximum visibility for all the managing partners. Wesley had given up on calling me directly, but continued sending daily texts with escalating desperation. "Please talk to me. I miss you." I fired Veda and told everyone it was a mistake. "The partners are asking if you're coming to the dinner. I told everyone you'd be there. Astrid, at least confirm you're coming. I put you at the head table." And to the last one, I finally replied, "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The night before the dinner, I met with one final person. Stella Vaughn, the no-nonsense office manager who had been with Caldwell, Bishop and Fletcher for 27 years, and knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. "They always think they're so clever," Stella said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "But I've been making backups of everything since before these kids knew what a hard drive was." The drive contained every message, every calendar entry, every deleted file from Wesley's work accounts for the past year, including a particularly illuminating exchange where he and Veda discussed using the corporate apartment for their lunch meetings. "Why are you helping me?" I asked Stella. She adjusted her glasses and gave me a look that could freeze fire. "My first husband pulled the same stunt in '92, with my sister. I've been waiting 30 years to see someone get the revenge I never did. When I returned to my apartment that night, there was a package waiting for me. Inside was a pair of diamond earrings and a note from Wesley. 'Please come home. I'm dying without you.' I put the earrings in my jewelry box next to the anniversary watch I'd planned to give him next month. Then I took out the watch and returned it to Tiffany's, using the refund to buy myself a diamond pendant that would perfectly complement my revenge dress. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, dreaming of Wesley's face when he realized that his professional and personal lives were about to go down faster than the actual Titanic. In my dream, I was standing on the lifeboat, waving goodbye with one hand and holding his career in the other. The morning of the Armstrong annual firm dinner dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself approved of my plans. I had my hair and makeup done professionally, opting for what the stylist called corporate dominatrix, powerful enough to command a boardroom, elegant enough for a formal dinner. As I slipped into my revenge dress, I felt a strange sense of calm. In 24 hours, Wesley's carefully constructed life would be in shambles, and mine would be beginning again, stronger, wiser, and significantly better paid. Game on, I whispered to my reflection. The Caldwell, Bishop and Fletcher annual firm dinner was being held at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, because nothing says we bill $750 an hour, quite like gold-plated bathroom fixtures and chandeliers that cost more than the average American home. I arrived precisely 37 minutes after the cocktail hour began, late enough to make an entrance, early enough to ensure Wesley had started drinking but wasn't completely sloshed. The firm had rented the entire grand ballroom, with tables arranged in concentric circles around a central podium where the managing partners would inevitably give self-congratulatory speeches about another record year of billable hours. A massive projection screen dominated the back wall, currently displaying the firm's logo in tasteful blue and silver. As I glided through the entrance, conversations stuttered to a halt like someone had pressed pause on 100 separate dialogues. I'd chosen my weapons carefully. The red dress that dipped low in the back, new diamond pendant catching the light, and 4-inch Louboutins that made my legs look spectacular while keeping me at perfect eye level with Wesley. "Astrid!" Senior partner Elliot Bishop approached first, champagne flute extended. "We weren't sure you'd make it. Wesley mentioned you've been traveling." "Did he?" I accepted the champagne with a smile that showed teeth. How creative of him. I've been redecorating, actually. It's amazing how removing dead weight from your life can completely transform a space. Elliot's eyes widened slightly. "Well, you look formidable." "Thank you. That's exactly what I was going for." I scanned the room and spotted Wesley by the bar, already on his second scotch judging by his loosened tie. The moment our eyes met, he nearly dropped his drink, then hastily set it down and made his way over. "You came," he said, relief flooding his features. He moved to kiss my cheek, but I stepped back just enough to make the gesture impossible without him lunging awkwardly forward. I said I would. Unlike some people in this relationship, I keep my commitments. Wesley flinched. "Astrid, please, can we talk somewhere private? Private conversations in your workplace haven't worked out so well for me recently. I prefer an audience now." Before he could respond, the dinner bell chimed, and everyone began moving toward their assigned tables. Wesley placed his hand on the small of my back to guide me, but I smoothly pivoted away from his touch. "I know where we're sitting, Wesley. Table 1, front and center, facing the presentation screen. I made sure of it." His brow furrowed. "Made sure? What do you mean?" "You'll see." Dinner proceeded with excruciating politeness. I chatted amicably with Harriet Caldwell to my left while completely ignoring Wesley on my right. He became increasingly agitated, knocking over his water glass twice and barely touching his filet mignon. "Is everything all right with you two?" Harriet whispered when Wesley excused himself to the restroom. "He looks like he's about to have a stroke. Let's just say he's been working too hard recently, burning the candle at both ends and the middle, and possibly in inappropriate offices after hours." Harriet's eyes narrowed shrewdly. "I see." When dessert arrived, managing partner Lawrence Fletcher stood and tapped his glass. "Another incredible year at Caldwell, Bishop and Fletcher. As is tradition, we have a few presentations from our partners highlighting key accomplishments. 3 partners gave standard presentations about major case wins and new client acquisitions. Wesley was scheduled to speak last about the firm's mentorship program, a particularly delicious irony given his unique interpretation of mentoring young female associates. As Wesley rose nervously from his seat, I caught Pierce's eye across the room. He gave me an imperceptible nod. "And now," Lawrence announced, "Wesley Armstrong will discuss our associate development program." Wesley approached the podium, straightening his tie. "Thank you, Lawrence. As many of you know, nurturing young talent is something I'm passionate about." I pressed the small remote in my clutch, and the screen behind Wesley suddenly changed from the firm's logo to a split image. On one side, a professional photo of Wesley with the title Performance Review, and on the other, a security camera still of him entering the downtown Marriott with Veda. The room went silent as the grave. Wesley, facing the audience, hadn't noticed the change behind him. And this year, we've implemented a structured mentorship program that pairs junior associates with Wesley. Lawrence interrupted, his face ashen. Behind you. Wesley turned, and I had the distinct pleasure of watching all the blood drain from his face. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to take over this presentation. Consider it a joint effort, much like Wesley and Veda's special projects. Without waiting for permission, I walked to the podium, gently moved a shell-shocked Wesley aside, and took my position. Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Astrid Armstrong, Wesley's wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, to be more accurate. I clicked to the next slide, which showed a graph of Wesley's late nights, plotted against hotel charges. I've prepared a comprehensive performance review of partner Armstrong's extracurricular activities over the past 6 months. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Wesley stood frozen beside me, mouth opening and closing like a fish tossed onto land. Astrid, stop this immediately, he finally managed. I'm just getting started, I replied sweetly, clicking to the next slide. Here we have Wesley's text message history with associate Veda Sinclair, arranged by time of day. Note the significant spike in communication during billable hours. One has to wonder how many clients were charged for this particular type of legal consultation. Lawrence stepped forward. Mrs. Armstrong, this is highly inappropriate for— Inappropriate? I laughed. Let me show you inappropriate. I clicked again, and the screen filled with emails between Wesley and Barrett Industries. These are communications where partner Armstrong discusses how to systematically overbill your largest client. I believe the technical term for this is fraud. The gasps were audible now. I spotted Elliot Bishop furiously typing on his phone, likely calling the firm's crisis management team. How ironic. Astrid, enough. Wesley grabbed for the remote, but I deftly moved it out of reach. What's wrong, Wesley? I thought you enjoyed public performances. You certainly didn't mind when it was my dignity being compromised in your office. Wesley's face contorted with rage and humiliation. This is my career you're destroying. And this was my marriage you were destroying. Funny how these things circle back, isn't it? I turned back to the stunned audience. Now, I won't take up much more of your evening. I just wanted to announce that I've accepted a position as Director of Client Relations at Mercer, Vaughan & Associates. And I'm bringing Landry Pharmaceuticals with me. They signed the contract yesterday. Oh, and Barrett Industries has also expressed interest in following me, especially after they review the billing audit I've recommended. Lawrence Fletcher looked like he might faint. Barrett is 30% of our annual revenue. Was 30%. I corrected gently. Now they're exploring other options, much like I did when I discovered my husband was sleeping with his associate. I clicked to the final slide, a simple image of the divorce papers I'd filed that morning. In conclusion, Wesley's performance over the past year has been substandard in both his professional and personal commitments. I recommend immediate termination. I turned to Wesley, whose complexion now matched the cranberry sauce from dinner. Of both his partnership and our marriage. I placed the remote on the podium, smoothed my dress once more, and addressed the room. Thank you for your attention. I've emailed copies of all documentation to the Ethics Committee and the Massachusetts Bar Association. The dessert is excellent, by the way. Don't miss it. As I walked toward the exit, the room remained in stunned silence. Then, from somewhere near the back, a slow clap began. I turned to see Stella Vaughn, the office manager, standing and applauding. One by one, other women in the room joined her. Paralegals, associates, administrative assistants, until nearly half the room was applauding. I gave them a small bow and walked out, heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. In the lobby, Edison Mercer was waiting with a glass of champagne. How'd it go? He asked, passing me the flute. I took a satisfying sip. Let's just say Caldwell, Bishop and Fletcher will be looking for a new junior partner, and you'll be gaining at least 2 major clients. Edison raised his glass. To new beginnings. And spectacular endings, I added, clinking my glass against his. 6 months after what the Boston legal community now refers to as the Armstrong annihilation, My life has transformed in ways I never imagined when I was standing in that office doorway with 3 containers of osso buco. Here's what they don't tell you about public humiliation turned vengeance. The aftermath is surprisingly peaceful. Like surviving a Category 5 hurricane and stepping out to find the sky an impossible shade of blue. My office at Mercer, Vaughan & Associates has floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. The nameplate on my door reads, Director of Client Relations, but everyone knows my unofficial title is the woman who brought down Caldwell, Bishop, and Fletcher. Since that night, 3 major clients followed me to Mercer, resulting in an 8-figure revenue shift that made the legal blogs run headlines like, Hell hath no fury like a marketer scorned. Wesley, as I discovered through Boston's elite gossip network, primarily orchestrated by Stella, who texts me updates weekly, was asked to take a leave of absence the morning after my presentation. This corporate euphemism for clean out your desk before we call security was followed by an ethics investigation that ultimately resulted in his license suspension for client billing fraud. Apparently, my detailed records were quite thorough. Who knew my obsessive spreadsheet habit would eventually serve justice? Veda Sinclair quietly moved to Philadelphia, where she took a position at a much smaller firm with significantly stricter fraternization policies. According to her carefully curated LinkedIn updates, she now specializes in employment law, which feels like the universe has a better sense of humor than I initially gave it credit for. Caldwell, Bishop, and Fletcher underwent a restructuring, another corporate euphemism for we're hemorrhaging clients help, bringing in an outside ethics consultant and implementing a zero-tolerance policy for workplace relationships. Harriet Caldwell personally called to offer me a partnership if I'd return, which I declined with what I hope was an appropriate level of graciousness mixed with, "Are you kidding me?" skepticism. My divorce was finalized with surprising efficiency. Wesley didn't contest anything after Margot presented the full dossier of his professional misconduct. In the end, I received the house, which I promptly sold, half his partnership shares, now worth significantly less but still substantial, and a settlement that made my financial advisor literally fist pump during our meeting. Today, I'm meeting Edison for our weekly strategy lunch at an overpriced bistro in Back Bay. He's become both a mentor and friend in this new chapter, though he still introduces me at client meetings with barely concealed awe, like I'm some sort of corporate Valkyrie who might destroy careers if the coffee isn't hot enough. To the 6-month anniversary of the greatest career transition in Boston legal history, Edison says, raising his sparkling water. You make it sound so dramatic, I reply, though we both know it absolutely was. 3 major clients, 2 industry awards for your crisis management campaign with Landry, and 1 epic takedown that's still being whispered about at every law school ethics lecture. I'd say dramatic is an understatement. I take a sip of my drink. Any news from our friends across town? Edison grins. They're merging with Bennett and Associates next month. Apparently, losing 30% of your revenue overnight necessitates drastic measures. Funny how actions have consequences. After lunch, I take a detour on my walk back to the office, passing by the building where I caught Wesley and Veda in their compromising position. Frank, the security guard, spots me and waves enthusiastically. "Mrs. Armstrong, or is it Ms. Palmer now?" he calls out. "Still Armstrong, actually. Turns out changing your name is a hassle, and I've rather enjoyed watching it become synonymous with don't mess with her in professional circles." Frank laughs. "Well, you're a legend around here. That Bradley fellow who replaced your ex? He stays late sometimes, but his door is always wide open, and he's got pictures of his wife plastered everywhere like protective talismans." I smile, oddly touched by this butterfly effect of my marital catastrophe. Good to know my legacy lives on. As I reach my own office building, my phone pings with a text from Margaret, my former mother-in-law. Against all odds, we've maintained a relationship, bonding over Wesley's betrayal in a way that transcends the usual ex-in-law awkwardness. "Thought you should know Wesley's moving to Chicago next month. Something about a fresh start. Also, I'm visiting Boston next week. Dinner?" I text back. "Absolutely. I know a great Italian place that does fantastic osso buco." Sometimes the best revenge isn't just the spectacular public humiliation, it's the quiet dignity of moving forward while others are still picking up the pieces. My assistant Ivy pokes her head in as I settle at my desk. Your 3 o'clock is here. Also, these came for you. She places a stunning arrangement of lilies on my credenza. The card reads, "Congratulations on the Landry campaign success. Dinner? Edison." I tuck the card into my drawer with a small smile. 6 months ago, I would have said I'd never trust another man again. Now, let's just say my boundary-setting skills have been refined to surgical precision. People often ask if I regret the dramatic way I ended my marriage, if I couldn't have handled it more privately or maturely. I always give them the same answer. When someone shows you who they are in high definition and surround sound, the only appropriate response is to make sure everyone else can see and hear it too. The thing about being underestimated, by your spouse, your colleagues, or society in general, is that it gives you the ultimate tactical advantage: surprise. Wesley never saw me coming because he never really saw me at all. And that, as they say in marketing, is a fatal error in brand recognition.